In my last video about Watch Dogs Legion, I said that this is by far the worst game what I have ever seen when it comes to Black Level Raise in the HDR picture mode. But guess what? Apex Legend is far worse. So let's start talking about the PlayStation 5 and HDR, because this is very quickly done, because there is no native HDR support for the PlayStation 5 version in Apex Legend. And even they're telling us that this game now has 4K and HDR support. Again, there is no native HDR support at this very moment when I'm doing this video. So let me prove this to you. Let's just jump into the settings menu in my screen and video options, and here HDR on when supported. And this is very important, because if you would use always on, regardless if a game supports HDR or not, the PlayStation 5 will always output HDR. So that's why I'm using on when supported. Okay, so let's jump back and let's go into the picture menu here on the HGIG, because we are right now in the HDR picture mode. Okay, so let me start the game. Where are we? That's the game. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, that's the game. And just have a quick look on the HDR picture mode, what is happening in a second. Now we're changing in the SDR picture mode. So there is no native support for this game on the PlayStation 5. So let me just quickly jump out. So where's my switcher here? It's a little bit hard to see with the option menu. Anyway, picture mode, have a look here, HDR. So as soon we're closing the game, we're changing back in the HDR picture mode, because now the PlayStation knows that the menu is supporting HDR, and that's why it's changing back. But again, the PlayStation 5 version at this very moment from Apex Legend does not support HDR natively. When we're starting the game on the Xbox Series X, and right now we are in the SDR picture mode, we are going to change into the HDR picture mode. So right now, at this very moment, there is no native HDR support for the PlayStation 5, but there is HDR support on the Xbox Series. But not just any HDR support. Apex Legend on the Xbox Series supports the HDR game calibration menu, but there's a problem. And even the game supports the HDR game calibration on the Xbox Series, the maximum peak brightness is limited up to maximum 1000 nits. And I like to show you what I'm talking about. So if you press all the 4 shoulder buttons at the same time while you're in this menu, you get this little window here with a couple of very helpful informations like minimum TML, maximum TML, and maximum FFTML. And usually the settings for the HGIG is 0, 800, 800. Okay, so not this, it is 800. Okay, but even now you set this to the maximum value of 10,000. So this one and this one as well, 10,000. Just give me a moment, it takes some time. The maximum peak brightness in Apex Legend is still limited to 1000 nits. With the correct settings in the HDR game calibration menu on the Xbox Series, the game right now likes to output 760 nits, which of course fits my HGIG perfectly. With the wrong settings, on the other hand, both values set to 10,000, the game likes to output 976 nits, which of course is a little bit too much for the HGIG, but not even close to 10,000 nits. And I haven't found any screenshot or any place or any location which goes over 1000 nits with setting 10,000 nits in the HDR game calibration. And of course I tried it the other way as well. I have set both values to 300, which is the minimum value what you can set in the HDR game calibration menu. And now the game likes to output 584 nits, which is a little bit too much compared to the setting in the HDR menu. But this proves the point that this game, Apex Legend, supports the HDR game calibration menu on the Xbox Series. The only option in terms of picture settings what we have in Apex Legend is the brightness option, but if you're going to use my recommended settings, then don't touch this menu or this setting at all. Okay, so let's talk about the Black Level Raise in the HDR picture mode on my LG ZX, and really just in the HDR picture mode, not in the SDR picture mode. So we remember that in Watchdog Legion, I told you that you have to decrease the brightness on the LG ZX to 44 to have no elevated black levels during cutscenes and gameplay. This was already ridiculous, but here in Apex Legion, you have to decrease this to 40 to have no elevated black levels. When I started the game for the very first time, and I really started the game for the very first time, I have never played Apex Legion before. Then I had to start with this trainings mission, and you start in this very dark room here, or that's the beginning, where a couple of rocks are here, and there's the exit actually. And I compared this in the SDR picture mode and in the HDR picture mode, and the SDR picture offers a very great contrast, because the only thing what you actually can clearly see is the exit here. The rocks here or the stones here are very hard to see, almost pitch black. As soon I changed to the HDR picture mode, I had a lot of elevated black levels here, and you can see everything is actually bluish, and blue means already we are in the SDR brightness. You know, this is maybe around 50 candela already. This is way too much because it is so washed out, it is just not funny anymore. Compared to the SDR picture mode, this is like day and night. But the good news is, as soon I changed my brightness setting on the LG ZX to 40, I had a very great picture, and compared to the SDR picture, I saw a lot of more details in the dark areas, but not in a bad way, in a very good way, because we need to remember that HDR is not just about maximum peak brightness, it's also about having more details in darker areas, because the dynamic range is much bigger. Okay, so I was actually surprised how good the HDR picture is looking when you decrease the brightness on the LG ZX to 40. Okay, so let's talk about my recommended settings for HDR10 and Dolby Vision. And by the way, Dolby Vision or HGIG and HDR10, there was not really a difference with the right settings. So let's talk about this. The most important thing is really brightness setting on the LG ZX. You have to decrease it to 40, otherwise you end up with a very washed out picture. It doesn't look good at all. In terms of the additional settings, what we have in Apex Legion, the brightness setting, do not touch it, okay? Because if you would touch those settings or this setting as well, maybe you decrease the brightness to 0 or 25 or whatever, you will have crushed black levels, okay? So you will lose actually details in the very dark areas, okay? So again, brightness setting on the LG ZX, decrease it to 40, but do not touch the brightness setting in Apex Legion. And the next thing is also very important. Do not use the fine-tuned dark area settings on the LG ZX in combination with the reduced brightness settings, okay? Because then you will end up with also crushed blacks, okay? Anyway, so the fine-tuned dark area setting here on the LG ZX, leave it to 0, but also keep in mind, if you like to use those settings, you have to have VRR, variable refresh rate, enabled on the Xbox Series. Otherwise, this setting has no impact in the game. Okay, and then we have the settings for the HDR calibration menu on the Xbox Series. And of course, I like to show you this again, what I'm talking about. So, HDR game calibration menu, you can access this actually, not here. So we go to Home, and in the option menu, under settings, display options, you have calibrate HDR for games, okay? We're going into this menu, and then we have HDR game calibration. So, and my settings are 0, 800, 800, and I like to explain this to you. So again, you press all the 4 shoulder buttons and you get this menu here, okay? With right now setting 0, 10,000, 10,000 because of the testing, okay? So we're going to change this to the correct value, and the first window means on the LG ZX 800, okay? So if you have, of course, a different TV and a different game, you have to use a different value here, okay? But also keep in mind, for Apex Legion, I proved it already, even you set this to 10,000, there's no difference in the game. Or let's say like this, the game is still limited to 1000 nits, okay? Anyway, this menu 800, or this window 800, and this one as well 800. So 0, 800, 800, that's the settings for the LGCX, okay, for most of the games in HDR10. And now we're talking about Dolby Vision, and as we know, to have the same maximum peak output, what I can measure with my colorimeter, we need to increase the settings a little bit for Dolby Vision. The same counts for Apex Legends. So in this case, we increase the value to 1000 on the first window and also 1000 on the second window. We're going to accept, and then we're good to go. Okay, so quickly again, my recommended settings. HDR calibration menu for HDR10, which includes dynamic tone mapping on, dynamic tone mapping off, and HGIG. Set this to 800 as I have shown you before. For Dolby Vision, change the value on both windows to 1000, okay? Very important is brightness setting on the LGCX, decrease it to 40, okay? Do not touch the brightness setting in Apex Legends, leave it to 50%, and also do not use the fine-tune dark area setting on the LGCX. And then do me the favor, try those settings on the LGCX or C1 or G1, and maybe also the C2 and G2. Maybe you have to increase actually the HDR calibration menu a little bit. But anyway, put in the comment section what you think about those settings. I really like to know how you like it. And as always, the question is, what picture mode or tone mapping mode should you use? And in my opinion, HGIG or Dolby Vision. So dynamic tone mapping on is a little bit too bright in my opinion, and it will clip a lot of very bright objects like specular highlights like the clouds here, or many other objects. So this game is, in my opinion, despite the issue with the Black Level Raise in HDR, optimized for HGIG. I mean, the reason that, or the case that this game is actually supporting the HDR game calibration menu on the Xbox, and hopefully soon on the PlayStation 5 as well, is proof that you should actually use HGIG. But again, there is no must. There is no must to use HGIG if you don't like it. If you like to have a brighter picture, because as always, dynamic tone mapping on is brighter than HGIG, then go for it. But I personally found the brightness, the average picture brightness from the game, more than enough to play in HGIG, okay? And again, in terms of specular highlights, in terms of details in the HDR objects, HGIG and Dolby Vision is far better than dynamic tone mapping on. Okay, my friends, so that's the end from the video, but let me say a couple of things about HDR in this game. So the HDR picture quality, let's say like this, in general is not bad, if we're not considering right now the ridiculous Black Level Raise in the HDR picture mode, because that's really a joke. And I can't understand how they can release a game with an issue like this. I really can't understand. I don't even know if Apex Legends, if the developer have a QA department. I don't think so. Or if they have ever tried this on a proper TV, on a proper monitor. So the HDR quality, the implementation is really not bad. The specular highlights, I found so many really nice or really good looking specular highlights, objects, details, whatever you call this. It's really not bad, but the ridiculous Black Level Raise destroys the picture completely if you don't know what to do. And again, reducing the brightness from 50 to 40, it's just wrong. It's just completely wrong. We shouldn't touch any picture settings on the LG or on any TV when we're playing a game in HDR. This shouldn't be the case, because there is just one picture option for everything. That's how it should be like. You know, you have one picture option like the game mode, maybe calibrated or whatsoever, and that's it. And regardless of what you connect to this HDMI port and what console you're actually using, then you don't need to change the picture option. That's how it is. That's how I use my TV. I have one calibrated settings, the game mode, and that's what I'm using for the PC. the Xbox, PlayStation 5 and Switch. And if I would have the PlayStation 4 still, then I would use exactly the same picture mode or options or settings. But unfortunately, games like this, where we have, and again, a very nice HDR implementation actually, but also we have a very bad, I don't know how to call this actually, but we have a very bad implementation in terms of the black level setting from HDR. This ruins the picture completely, and many people that don't know what's going on, they're just playing it like it is, and they're just wondering why HDR looks very bad, and compared to SDR, completely wrong. I have to agree, completely wrong. If you do not decrease the setting from 50 to 40, the SDR picture looks much better. That's how it is. Anyway, I hope that in the future, at some point, we have better HDR implementations. And don't start, please, that we need a standard for HDR. We don't need a standard. There is a standard. The standard is called HDR10 or Dolby Vision. We don't need a standard. The developer just need to follow the standard correctly, okay? That's how it is. This is just lazy. This is just wrong. This is just no quality control at all. That's what it is. Has nothing to do with HDR10 standard or Dolby Vision standard, okay? And the next thing is, we don't even have on PlayStation 5 HDR. There's no native HDR support on the PlayStation 5. I don't know what is going on here, and believe me, I tried a lot to make it happen, and I was at some point, I was really thinking about what I'm doing wrong here, but I'm not doing anything wrong. There is no native support right now on the PlayStation 5, but there's still advertising like this. I have no idea what went wrong. So the whole next gen update in terms of HDR on the Xbox and the PlayStation 5 is right now, in my opinion, a disaster. Thank you very much for watching me. I see you guys next time. Bye.